Shalom. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakodash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Ainan. The title of this video is We Know This is the End of the Fourth Beast because dot dot dot. Right. And basically, we'll jump right into it. We know and understand that the fourth beast is what the Roman Empire, and out of that Roman Empire, we had the revised Roman Empire, right, which is America, and we are now in that fourth beast, which is America, right? So, and we know that we're at the end of what the title was. We know this is the end of the fourth beast because why? Because the signs and effects that's happening around the world and his system collapsing because this is a system that he set up, which we'll get in Daniel 8, right? And it's done. So, this is Daniel 7 and 15, and I have breakdowns on this on my page. Look forward and there Daniel chapter 7, Revelations chapter 20, but I'll break it down a little bit here. So I'll get straight to the point, the vision interpreted, right? So this is Daniel 7 and 15. It says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. It says, I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. It says, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. So there will be four kingdoms upon planet Earth that will rule, right? And then, ultimately fall. Because the next verse in verse 18 says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever, right? And the four kingdoms that were on the planet Earth are what? Babylon, right? And then you have the Medo-Persian Empire, then you have the Greek Empire, and then ultimately last you will have the Roman Empire. And once again, out of the Roman Empire came what? America, right? And this is the revised Roman Empire, which is that fourth beast. It says, so verse 18 again, it says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So ultimately, at the fall of these four beasts, these four kingdoms upon earth, which were at the end of we're at the end of the beast, the fourth kingdom, Yahweh Shai will return, right? And set up his kingdom, right? The kingdom of the Israelites. It says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, breaking pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. Right. So the Roman Empire was, a fierce and dreadful kingdom, right? And they used what? Iron and brass for their weapons and things like that, and they destroyed many peoples. It says in of the 10 horns that were in his head. So along with the Roman Empire came what? The vassal states. Just like you have now, America. As the revised Roman Empire, they are America, and then you have what? The vassal states of America, which is the NATO and the EU. See, so this is the same thing. It says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell. So now this is kind of explaining what we read up earlier up top, but I'm not going to get it right now. It says, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And it's just talking about America. We get it. It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. See, it's going to the same thing that's explained earlier, just right here. This last kingdom will fall, and the saints shall possess the kingdom and take it. Anyway, verse 23, it says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. See, it said, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and shall subdue 3 kings. So now, once again, this goes back to verse 20 right here, right? It says, going back to 24, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Now, the horn that subdued 3 kings that came out of this Roman Empire is America, right? Because what America had to go fight in those revolutionary wars, break away from Great Britain to become who they are today. And those revolutionary wars were between what the French, the British, and the Spanish, right? So those are the three kings that America subdued. It says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. So that goes into that Second Thessalonians 2, the man of lawlessness being revealed also. Like I quoted earlier, Revelations 20, starting at verse 7, Satan shall be loose out of his prison. That goes into the time of what? When basically Renaissance, the rebirth of America, right? Renaissance means rebirth, right? So that goes back to that time. It says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And this is what America did when they got back in power. Ultimately, what we, the Israelites, went into slavery. So that's what happened. It says, and to think to change times and laws. This is what America did. They changed the calendars around. They changed the laws around once they got their power. It says, and they, being the Israelites, shall be given into his hand until the time and times in the dividing of times. Roughly 350-year period of time. But even up now into this point today, we're still under subjection, basically to the devil, Esau, the so-called white man. It says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it unto the end. So what is that talking about? Basically, the judgment against Babylon the Great, and his judgment is to be fully destroyed. Babylon the Great, America, the new revised Roman Empire, will be destroyed, and the saints, the Israelites, will take the kingdom once we wait on our Lord and King to return, who is Yahweh Shah, right? And you can read about that in the second Esdras chapter 13. He comes with the angels in the chariots, and himself in the fathership, shooting forth laser beams from those chariots, right? You can even say spaceships. He's coming in a gigantic spaceship. It says, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Here too is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cognition must trouble me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart, which is the mind. So Daniel got this vision, and it was like, whoa, crazy vision, right? So, so going to this now. So mind you, this is the fourth beast. This is Daniel 8, and we're going to start at 23. Daniel 8 and 23, it says, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So now what? We're thinking about the fourth beast, right? After all the other kings rule and we're at the end, it says what? A king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So now in this time, in the revised Roman Empire, this is the person that's here now is America. This is that fierce king that will stand up as a whole. You can even get Isaiah 19, where it goes into a cruel Lord ruling over the people, and that's who we believe to be Donald Trump now, right? Who was Nero back in the flesh. If you look up old Nero and how he was and the things that he did, and you look at Donald Trump, and actually you put their pictures together, they look kind of similar, right? And they ruled the same way, so that's that fierce king that is talking about now in this time. It says, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. It says, NLT, he will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause a shocking amount of destruction and succeed in everything he does. He will destroy powerful leaders and devastate the holy people, right? And basically the scriptures say, Yahweh Bashmi Shai ruleth in the kingdom of men, and set up over whom he pleases, roughly paraphrasing the scripture. So, basically it was the Lord that brought Esau, Edom into power, So moving on, verse 25, and this is the point I wanted. Daniel 8 and 25, it says, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. Now this is the point. What was one big policy that allowed this revived Roman Empire to prosper? The petrodollar bill. That's the whole point. The petrodollar bill, which is pretty much at an end. It says, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against a prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And there's a lot of ways that his policy has destroyed many, which could go into his laws, and different decrees that he set up. But one of the big ones, which he got a foothold, in the start of his kingdom, is the petrodollar bill. So what is the petrodollar bill? Let's get it.
The US dollar is the standard currency used to pay for oil globally, prompted by an agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia in 1945. This agreement led to other oil exporting countries accepting the dollar as payment for oil, and the relationship between the dollar and oil began. Some countries exported so much oil and accumulated such large amounts of US dollars that they couldn't spend them all. If the country accepting US dollars as payment can't spend them all, they are effectually removed from circulation. The dollars these countries could not spend came to be known as petrodollars. The petrodollar came into existence following the elimination of the gold standard. After World War II, the United States held most of the world's supply of gold. It agreed to redeem any US dollar for its value in gold if the other countries pegged their currencies to the dollar. Other countries signed on to this deal at the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference. It established the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. The 1945 US-Saudi Arabia Agreement, on February 14, 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt initiated the alliance with Saudi Arabia. He met with Saudi King Abdul Aziz. The United States built an airfield at Tehran in return for military and business training. This alliance was so critical that it survived subsequent years of differences of opinion over the Arab-Israeli conflict. The 1971 U.S. detached from gold standard. In 1971, U.S. stagflation prompted runs on the dollar. Many countries asked to redeem their U.S. dollars for gold, to protect the remaining U.S. gold reserves. President Richard Nixon removed the dollar from the gold standard. As a result, the dollar's value plummeted, which helped the U.S. economy as its export values also decreased, making them more competitive. A falling dollar hurt oil exporting countries because contracts were priced in US dollars. Their oil revenues dropped along with the dollar. The cost of imports, denominated in other currencies, increased. The 1973 deal between the US and Saudi Arabia. In 1973, the petrodollar system was created through a deal between the US and Saudi Arabia. The countries agreed to price and trade oil in US dollars. With oil standardized in terms of dollars, any country that purchased oil from Saudi Arabia would have to use dollars. This led many other oil-producing countries to also standardize oil prices in US dollars, and the petrodollar system was born. In 1979, the United States and Saudi Arabia negotiated the United States-Saudi Arabian Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation. They agreed to use US dollars for oil contracts. The US dollars would be recycled back to America through contracts with US companies. These companies improved Saudi infrastructure through technology transfer. Because the petrodollar is denominated in US dollars, the system means that oil-producing countries end up with surpluses of US currency that need to be recycled back into the economy. Petrodollar recycling can involve countries conducting the following activities: channeling these dollars back into their own domestic economies, lending them to other countries, investing them in the US economy, buying assets and securities like treasury bills. The petrodollar system gave the US dollar elevated status as the dominant currency in the global economy. This has many benefits for the US, including consistent trade deficits and source of liquidity, inflow of foreign capital through petrodollar recycling, ability to finance deficit with low interest rate assets, decisive influence over global economic markets. The same elevated status for the US dollar is also responsible for the downsides of petro currency. The petro system results in a catch-22 for the US dollar that could cause it to lose its status. The US needs to run account deficits to maintain liquidity in a continuously expanding global economy. Stopping these deficits will slow down the global economy. Continuing the deficits may cause other countries to downgrade the value of the dollar. The recent Russia-Ukraine conflict has highlighted that countries can be totally cut off from the global financial system, and the dollar reserves they have painstakingly built could become worthless overnight. This is
Right. So that's the point I'm getting to now. Basically, going back to this, that's the policy that he, one of the many policies, that allowed him to prosper, for craft to prosper in his hand, because he gained a dominance over the world through money. Also, these banking elites, right? The JOOs, they were involved in money. And what they did was basically wrap the world around the dollar for America through oil. So that's what happened. But, like my title says, we know this is the end of the fourth beast because de-dollarization, right? So that deal is no longer in effect, which I'm going to get that video last. It says de-dollarization five oil giants now settling in yuan, not USD, right? And this is a big thing. This is April 30th, 2025. There no that policy, that is no longer in effect. People are moving away from that dollar, and basically America is losing its power now because you can't control the world, if people are not only using your dollar. So it says de-dollarization is definitely gaining momentum right now in 2025, as five major oil companies have begun to shift significant portions of their settlements from US dollars to Chinese yuan. This ongoing trend, which is currently being driven by strategic partnerships and also various geopolitical tensions, signals a potential reshaping of the global financial system that has for many decades been dominated by the dollar. See, so they was prospering because what the dollar dominated, the world. So they was good, but now they're not good because people are just, moving around that. It says China's influence grows as oil giants switch from USD to yuan, right? And yuan belongs to China, kind of like USD belongs to America. It says Sinopec leads yuan-based energy trade, right? And you have things also like the BRICS, different alliances being formed around the world, and trying to move around from the dollar. Said the Chinese refiner Sinopec stands as the biggest oil refinery in China and leads the way for yuan payment deals. Sinopec established the important milestone of Saudi Aramco, Armaco. Let me see what it's talking about. I'm actually parked at one of those right now.
Aramco.
All right, Aramco. So that's the name of that. It says Sinopec established the. Let me make sure this is the one. It says Sinopec established the important milestone of Saudi Aramco in creating a 4 billion yuan dominated joint venture. Let me see what this is talking about. Denominated.
Denominate.
Right, denominate. It says the expressness specified monetary unit. The borrowings were denominated in US dollars. So it's of sums of money. It says Sinopec established the important milestone of Saudi Aramco and creating a 4 billion yuan denominated joint venture during April 2025 while accelerating worldwide de-dollarization initiatives. All right. It says Sinopec and its unit shall contribute 7.20 billion yuan and 14.40 billion yuan in cash, respectively. The remaining amount, representing 25% of the registered capital of the joint venture, will come from AAS. All right. So, basically it's going to the fact that what? They're no longer using the US dollar. They're using their own currencies. And you got 144 right there. Call halal Yahweh Bashin Awashai. It says Saudi Aramco expands yuan-based projects. Saudi Aramco, which is currently the world's largest oil exporter, has also been expanding yuan-based refining and petrochemical projects in China. And although it's not fully settled in yuan just yet, Aramco's growing partnership with Chinese firms certainly signals a strategic shift toward de-dollarization in oil trade. So read this one. It says Gazprom, Russian energy companies pivot to yuan. Gazprom, Russia's major state-owned energy company, has really accelerated yuan settlements due to Western sanctions. And in 2025, Gazprom continues to ramp up pipeline gas and LNG to China via yuan trade agreements, which is another clear indicator of the de-dollarization trend. So it's a trend to de-dollarize. All right. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I want to go into. The fact that the nations are de-dollarization, is happening. They're de-dollarizing. And, like I mentioned, you have things like BRICS. And we I did a video on that before. That's on my page regarding Russia. China, Brazil. Africa is in there. Iran is, I believe, joining. You know, and all these different people coming together to go around basically the dollar. So they're losing their power. So once again, that goes back to the policy failing. So it goes back to my title. That's how we know that we're at the end of the fourth beast, because he prospered through his policy. But now that same policy is failing. So that's one of the many ways that he's losing. So anyway, petrodollar agreement, and I got something here on my phone that I'll pull up. I try to pull it up here, but it's all good. Let me see. All right, so this is a question that says, how did the global oil trade settle in US dollars in the first place? And I played that in that video, but I'll read it here. It says, following the collapse of the Bretton Woods system in 1971, which ended the US dollar convertibility to gold. So, President, uh, the president, I believe it was Nixon, took the dollar off the gold standard. That's what it's talking about. It says the dollar's value began to decline, which we just watched in that video. It says the U.S. formed a series of strategic agreements with Saudi Arabia. So this is going to, the policy, you know, right, that America set up. It says in other OPEC countries to stabilize the dollar and maintain its global dominance, right? It says, though not mandating using dollars for oil transactions, these agreements created a system where oil exporting nations would price their oil in dollars, invest their surplus dollars reserves in U.S. treasuries, and buy U.S. goods and services. It says, and then it says in return, U.S. will, basically protect them militarily and things like that. So, the next question is, how much of the world's oil trade is priced in US dollars? It says as of 2023, approximately 80% of the world's oil transactions are priced in US dollars. See, so that's how you see that basically America, was dominating, was winning, right? Because more than half of oil purchases were, purchased to what? The US dollar. And then it says the bottom line. It says the petrodollar system has been a crucial pillar of U.S. economic strength for almost half a century, right? And that, I keep saying it, Daniel 18:25 says, creating a symbiotic relationship. Let me see, creating a symbiotic, right? Creating a let me see what this is we're talking about right here too. Where is that? All right. All right.
Symbiotic.
Symbiotic, it says involving interactions between two different organisms living in close physical association. All right, so that's the word they got there. So anyway, it says, I'll start it over. It says the petrodollar system has been a crucial pillar of U.S. economic strength for almost half a century, creating a symbiotic relationship between the global oil trade and the value of the American dollar. This arrangement has ensured a consistent demand for U.S. currency and treasury security. See, so this is, crafty counsel, basically, It says, allowing America to maintain lower interest rates and finance its deficits more easily, and basically just to control the world. The dollar is always strong, basically. So if the dollar is strong, the economy of America, will be good. But, in these last days, we're saying that right now, people are making a shift from the dollar and America is declining. And as it says here, it says a decline in the petrodollar system would have far-reaching consequences for the U.S. economy and the international financial order. A shift away from dollar denominated oil trades could reduce demand for USD It says potentially leading to a weaker dollar, which is what's happening right now. It says higher interest rates and increased borrowing costs for the US government and consumers. Moreover, it could accelerate the transition to a more multipolar global financial system. So that has happened, and like I mentioned, BRICS. We can just go ahead and get that then. BRICS, the BRICS nations. BRICS is an intergovernmental organization composed of 10 nations. All right, so we got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and United Arab Emirates. It says initially formed as BRIC in 2009, it expanded to include South Africa in 2011, becoming BRICS. It says the organization's goal is to promote economic cooperation and development among its member countries. And why is that? Because basically America, has been the bully. So these nations form together to try to help themselves, basically. So that's the time we're living in, what's happening in the world with that. You can go ahead and read that if you want, pause the screen or whatnot. So that's BRICS. Continue reading over here. It says, right, moreover, it could accelerate the transition to a more multipolar global financial system. Right, and also BRICS are trying to start their own currency. And I guess right now they're leaning towards, going to, of course, the digital currency. It says altering the balance of economic power and reshaping international trade relationships. So pretty much America has had the dominance in that area, regulating different things, doing different things. And that's why in these last days, they've been basically been a bully, sanctioning people, and all of that. It says over time, the percentage of the world's reserve currencies in USD have diminished. Yet it says, yet no currency is rising to take its place, right? And then it says also far from it. But basically, we're in a time now where something is rising up, the digital currency, which is America's trying to bring in now, But anyway, they're at the collapse. And so they're going to have to do something, Let me grab this. Because we know, through everything that's going on, that America is trying to do what? Move to a digital currency. They're trying to collapse America now. And that's why, even in the news, they keep talking about the debt that can't be paid back, right? Let me grab this, Habakkuk 2. This Habakkuk 2:6, it says, shall not all these take up a parable against him? This is talking about Babylon the Great, America, right? The so-called white man. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting poverty against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that laid himself with thick clay. And this thick clay, which we'll get right here, is the Hebrew word abatya, right? Abatya, and it's going into weight of pledges, heavy debt, right? So that's what America has. They have heavy debt, and in the news and things like that. What is Trump talking about? He's talking about the debt can't be paid back, right? But the debt must be paid back, and since they can't pay it back, they're going to war. They're collapsing the system. That's why we have things now like tariffs, and a tariff is what attacks on the people, right? So it's hurting the consumer. It's hurting the Americans, and basically, what is that going to lead to? Chaos in the streets, and how the elite operate, these banking elites that caused crap to prosper in their hands through their policy, and now they're still doing the same thing by making new policies. Even right here, what Isaiah 10 says, that Isaiah 10:1, it says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees and that right grievousness which they have prescribed. So they're still doing the same thing they have been doing, which is writing these different decrees and making these different laws, these different policies. So now how they move is order out of chaos. I forgot what point I was going to, but anyway, they're gonna bring in chaos in the world to bring in a new order, right? And at the same time, and I kept mentioning Revelations 20, so I'll just grab that because it says that they're gonna go to war. So because at the same time they're going to war with Russia, and Iran and China and all of that. Daniel 20:7, it says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So Gog and Magog goes back to Ezekiel chapter 38, where it goes into Russia, right? Russia joining these different nations, just like BRICS. If you look at the nations and BRICS, a lot of these individuals are going to join Russia, to come against Babylon the Great, you know. So so going back, it says, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. So this the Renaissance period, the rebirth, right? And it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations, and they did. They deceived the nations, the people, right? They put their policy out there. They deceived even Saudi Arabia, and the world by what? Making them spend or use oil through the dollar, right? America basically set themselves up to be great, but it was through Yahweh Bashmi Awashad. It was the Lord that put them in that position, to be this kingdom. The scriptures say Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. See, so the Lord used Babylon to great America. But now, like I said, they're going to war with Gog and Magog, which is Russia, to gather them together to battle, right? And it's going to be a whole host of individuals, right, in that World War III. So that's pretty much it. And this is the last video because what? Once again, we know this is the end of the fourth beast because
Saudi Arabia has decided to terminate its 50-year-old petrodollar agreement with the United States. As per reports, the deal was signed on June 8, 1974, but has expired on June 9, 2024, and the Middle East country has not renewed it. Petrodollar is a term used as the US dollar as the currency for global crude oil transactions. The petrodollar system came in after US went off the gold standards. The deal was set up joint commissions for economic cooperation and Saudi Arabia's military needs. In exchange for guaranteeing the security of the Saudi regime and providing military aid, Saudi Arabia agreed to price its oil exports exclusively in US dollars. This agreement ensured a steady demand for the US dollars as other countries needed dollars to purchase oil, effectively reinforcing the dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency. But with the changing dynamics, what it does now is that it enables Saudi Arabia to sell oil and other goods in multiple currencies, including the euros, the yen, and the yuan. In any case, the rise of the renewables and natural gas have been steadily reducing the world's reliance on oil, and even oil-rich countries like Saudi Arabia have evolved. This is also emergence of the new oil-producing nations such as Brazil and Canada, which have challenged the traditional dominance of Middle East. So from nearly 80% of global oil sales are priced in US dollar, countries like Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, China, and others are increasingly shifting to local currencies in energy trade. In 2023, 20% of global oil was bought in other currencies, as per the Wall Street Journal. While the markets are still trying to understand the full implications of an international trade, whether there would be a global currency realignment and finance from this, would it lead to more currency volatility? But the end of it all is, remember, that the Saudi riyal, as is the case with many other currencies, are still pegged to the US dollar.
right, so hey, pretty much they're the end, and this is just one aspect of their end, right? We're seeing, just like Matthew 24 goes into wars, rumors of wars, right? Nation against nation, all these different things are happening, so that lets you know that we're at the end of this fourth beast, which is America. All right, Lord willing, you are edified from the lesson. I'll say shalom to those for elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.